Fear only gets to make the choices that you say is okay for it to make. We're going to talk a little bit about that and how riding a train helped me free myself right after this intro. And welcome back to another episode of The Daily Donna with me, your host, Dr. Donna Oriowo, sex and relationship therapist in the Washington, D.C. metro area, and author of Drink Water and Mind Your Business, a Black woman's guide to unlearning the BS and healing self-esteem, y'all. Y'all didn't even know I was gone, but baby is back. And I wanted to talk a little bit about fear and anxiety specifically. Now, what I'm going to say does not apply to everyone. It applies to me, though. It applies to how I have lived my life. And I'll say that it has also applied to the way that I've seen many of my clients as well. The thing about fear and anxiety is that they can make your life small because that fear, that anxiety starts telling us what we can and what we cannot do, how we have to do things in a very specific way, in a very prescribed way, the way that it's like, no, I can't do this thing, or I can't do this thing at this time. It's got to be like this. It's got to be right. You start being very specific because that fear is speaking so loud. And here's the thing. You're smart, friend. You're smart enough that you can make it seem reasonable to stunt yourself and to stunt your growth, because when you speak, it makes sense. When you say it out loud, even to other people, it would make sense. So you doing everything that you can by the book that your anxiety wrote sounds like it all makes sense until it stops being a thing that makes sense. I have a fear these days of getting on an airplane, which I have decided is no longer mine, so I don't have that fear no more. But I get anxious about being on an airplane. There's something about being in somebody's metal tube hurtling through the sky. Mind you, the problem is not the heights, because quite frankly, the fact that if it all fell apart, that, it'd just be over, that actually kind of comforts me in a way that I understand that does not comfort other people. The idea of being stuck in there, I don't like that. And that goes for any other form of transportation that I do not control. I recognize that I have a desire for control. And now I've known this for a while. And I even know where it stems from. That's not your business. I'm not going to tell you that. The point is that in knowing this thing, and having a background in therapy, in psychology, in social work, right, in mental health, being smart enough to create the circumstances that allows me not to stretch myself, for me to create the circumstances that allow me to continue to build that allow me to continually make my world smaller, because I'm scared. And I know that I'm scared, and I let other people know that I'm scared, but then I still don't want to change my behavior. Sometimes the thing that we have to do more than anything else is simply to stretch ourselves. So, for me, my regimen over the last so many years has been increase how long you can stand to be on an airplane. So what that looked like is, like the first trip post panic attack on a flight was go to Atlanta, because I was used to going to Atlanta. I know how long that is. That's quick, that's fast, that's easy. Then it was go to Louisiana, a little bit longer, not too much longer. I'm in the DMV area for context. Then it was go to California. Now, going to California is a little bit of a stretch. I should have put a little step in between it. But the point is that each flight that I took was just a little bit longer than the last flight. It was, how much longer can you stand to be on this plane? How much larger can you make your world? How will you manage your anxiety? Create the plan, follow the plan, and then adjust if things require adjusting. So for me, that means that I create a freak out timer on my Apple on my watch. So it's like, okay, how long is the flight plus 2 hours? If you're still on this airplane, you are allowed to freak out. For me, that freak out means I'm allowed to cry. Where it comes to other modes of transportation, those things have been harder, right? creating a regimen for getting on a flight, easy. Because with a flight, I'm not on a flight every day. But you can reroute your entire life to never be on anyone's subway ever again. And that's what I realized that I was doing. And then a girl was in Barcelona. Barcelona. And in Barcelona, I took a cooking class, learning how to make paella. Mm, delicious. And I started wandering, and I was wondering to myself, how much will I allow my anxiety to continue to cost me? Will it cost me 25 euros to get back to the hotel? Or will I go ahead and pay the 4 euros and ride the metro? The metro that's underground, which doesn't feel natural. And I was just like, I'm just going to try. I'm going to try. And what I did was a lot of self soothing. It was a lot of self talk. It's a lot of reminding myself that number one, they're going to let me back off. That number two, I don't even have to stay on. It was an experiment. It was going to cost me $4 or $5 to run this experiment. But the point was this, I did it. And I even made a video to commemorate the fact that I did do it. I called my mama. I called my husband because I needed somebody to know that this thing that has been difficult for me, that I did that. I did it. And it was after I'd done it, after, that relief and that like, oh, if I did this, I know that I can do other things that are difficult for me. That I realized just how small my world, how insular my world had gotten because of the way that I was engaging with my anxiety. And there is something to be said about how we build up our capacity for BS so that we never have to engage in the work that would help our worlds be bigger, that would help us to be more stable, that would help us to have more connection, that would challenge us to live the life we actually want instead of just settling for the life that fits inside the bubbles that we give ourselves because we're scared. And it made me wonder, if I'm doing it, I know I'm not alone. I'm special, but I'm not that special. So that means that somebody else is outside making their world smaller because they are simply scared to stretch. And I'm wondering if it's you. Are you making your world smaller because you are too scared to stretch? And you may be scared to stretch in multiple things, right? Maybe for you, it's not about getting on public transportation. Maybe it's actually putting yourself out there, right? Maybe it's telling your friends about the type of work that you want to do. Maybe it's taking the class, taking a test. Maybe it's going to buy your first power tools, whatever it is, right? Maybe it's putting on some skates, dancing, trying a new hair color. There are multiple ways that we learn to tell ourselves no. And every time we tell ourselves no, particularly when we do so with no real explanation, when there's nothing meaty to grasp onto there, we also make our world smaller. That telling ourselves no, sometimes it's not even us that's doing it. Sometimes it's someone or something else. Sometimes it's not this version of you. It's a version of you that has long since passed, that doesn't even know how not to take up as much room as it does. I'm inviting you to consider, what is it that is going on in your life that is allowed to take up as much room as it takes up while shrinking your world all at the same time, keeping you from being able to have experiences. I'll say one thing that I do see, and you let me know if it's you, friend. I noticed that like the social media girlies, the baddies, the ones that clearly are getting these brand deals, they go outside, they take their first class trip with their Louis Vuitton luggage filled with all of their extra high-end stuff. They get to where they're going, and after their first class flight, they got flued out, they eating well, they dress nice, sun glistening, all that other stuff. They looking great, looking good to their 5-star accommodations while they're eating their Michelin star meals. And we start wanting that. We want it so badly that despite the fact that we have an opportunity to take that trip to Seoul, despite the fact that we had that opportunity to take that trip to Barcelona, Despite the fact that we have that opportunity to take ourselves to Japan, we say, nah, if I can't do it like this, I won't do it. You just made your own world small for no good reason at all. I understand wanting what we want, but I think that sometimes we are not asking ourselves the full question. Why do we want what we want? And why does it have to be in a very specific way that in some ways makes it so that we never have the experience at all? I'm saying that sometimes we make ourselves small, we make our world small by saying if it can't happen exactly like this, aka full control, if I can't have full control of every sight, sound, smell, taste, everything, then I don't want it, period. But that is not how life is. That is not how life goes. And why am I saying this? It is similar to what I was already doing. You're making your life small because you are fighting for control over everything when the only thing you truly have control over is you. This is just something for us to both go ahead and sit in to think in, and for us to call it in. So the question is, are you making your life a little bit smaller? And if you know you have been, tell me how. Tell me the area that you feel like you've been making your life smaller in the comments. And let's see about what we can do to make our lives a little bit bigger. I mean, okay, here's the secret because I'm whatever. One way to make your life a little bit bigger is to make a decision about whether or not that fear is allowed to make that choice. If the answer is no, what emotion do you want to help you make the choice instead? And let it help map out what happens next. All right, you are the bee's knees. I am Dr. Donna. This is the Daily Donna, and we have our conversations with a slightly therapeutic edge. But this is my sort of Sunday musings. So I will see you when tomorrow for another episode. Especially since this is my first time back in the U.S. with no more pre-recorded episodes. Yeah, we're gonna see what all happens. Also, this is the shirt that I bought to commemorate my Barcelona utilization of the metro. It is 100% cotton. Yes, get into it. All right, I will see you tomorrow. Bye.